On behalf of the Mount Washington Valley Economic Council, I greet you and welcome you to yet another Eggs and Issues. We have found over the years that when we invite politicians who are well informed, such as Representative Chandler, we have a better draw in the summertime. Other topics don't seem to float people as well. First, I want to introduce our business sponsor who are paying for the taping for Valley Vision so that folks who can't come at this particular hour can watch one of the 6 showings that will happen over the next month. So, Liz and Josh.
Young professionals in the We'll be very, very brief.
After that.
I'm Liz LaJoy, the business manager at HEB Engineers right up here in North Conway, and this is one of my partners, Josh McAllister, who's one of our senior civil engineers and a Valley kid, born and raised. We just wanted to say a quick hello. We do have a door prize for afterward, and for those of you who don't know HEB, we are going into our 40th year here in the Valley. We provide civil engineering, structural engineering, and land surveying services to a variety of people and organizations, and that's about it. We're always happy to sponsor Eggs and Issues. We were involved in the building of the Tech Village, and it's one of the projects that we're particularly proud of, so we always like to be here. That's all we have.
When someone is introduced as a senior engineer who was a classmate of one of your kids, I'll just leave that ... So I want to say that we always try to have an update as to what's been going on legislatively that has implications for our businesses. And I went ahead and invited Gene, thinking he was still Speaker of the House. I've been here long enough so I lose track of what status is what and who's now in charge of the House and the Senate. But Gene has always been amenable to coming and talking with us and sharing the knowledge and also the oversight as to what's been going on legislatively. I also want to recognize that we have another representative in the House, Ed Butler, who has a slightly different point of view, and Gene and he will occasionally describe their differences as well as their similarities. So without further ado, Gene Chandler.
Thank you very much, and it's good to be back. It's good to be invited most anywhere these days. So, and recognize, as you did, Representative Butler, but also Representative Susan Ticehurst is here from Ossipee. So, made the drive up. Tamworth, excuse me, in that district down there. And I would be remiss if I didn't recognize my good friend, Bino Lamontagne, who just walked in, who's, as most of you know that have been involved with economic development in the state of New Hampshire, especially in the North Country, know that he's a real force to help us up here in the North Country, from here to the Canadian border. So thanks for your help, Bino, over the years. And as I explained to Representative Butler, I said, Ed, anytime, and Susan too, that I say something that's factually wrong, please, by all means, stand right up and correct me. Now, philosophically, we can talk about that some other time. But for those of you that have been to these, I really don't like to, this may sound strange, but to speak at any great length. So I prefer to answer questions that people might have. However, I do know there were a few bills in question that were sent out, either, I think, emailed out to people of interest, and I will run through those quickly. I will give just a brief overview, and I'm sorry if I'm boring people, but sometimes people either don't know or have forgotten just exactly how the legislative process works. And New Hampshire is a little unique in a couple ways, and in good ways, in my opinion. Any elected state representative can file a bill. It can be the stupidest idea in the world, but if a representative wants to do it, or you as a constituent can consider talking them into doing it, they can file a bill on whatever subject. The good thing that's very unique in the state of New Hampshire is that every single bill that's filed has a public hearing before a committee. It's assigned to a committee in the House and or the Senate, and it has a public hearing in that body. Many states, and even New Hampshire, well, now it's getting to be probably 40 years, 35 years or so, a chairman of a committee, the bill was referred to it. If he didn't like well, unfortunately, sometimes if he didn't like the sponsor or of the bill, or if he didn't like the subject matter, he just would stuff it in his desk and it would never see the light of day. That got a little abused from time to time, obviously. So the legislature, in its wisdom, and Marshall Cobley, years ago, former Speaker of the House, stopped that practice. So we're one of the few states that every single bill gets a public hearing. Now that's huge because we have anywhere from 700 to 900 bills in any given year. So it's a long process. The bill will be heard before a committee. The committee will then take some action on it, either immediately or put it into study for a week or two, whatever they want to do, and report out to the House whether they favor the bill or don't or not. Inexpedient to legislate means you're going to kill it, ought to pass, could be ought to pass with amendment, any number of things. But then the beauty of it is, even if the committee votes unanimously to kill that bill, it'll go on the floor of the House, either on the consent calendar where we do a lot of things in one day under one big motion, or on the regular calendar where it can be discussed. But that the sponsor of that bill, even if the committee has voted to kill it, has another chance to try to convince the House to pass his or her bill. So that's another unique thing. It isn't like just because the committee says no, that's the end of the issue. In a lot of states, that's what happens. Committee votes no, that's done right then. The House never gets a chance, or Senate doesn't get a chance to vote on it. So that's another important step protecting the process. Lengthens the process, but it really gives, and when we talk about a citizens' legislature and people actually voting, recognizing their constituents in their districts and even throughout the whole state, that's really important. Basically, every rep is representing about 3,200 people, I think it is now. So it's right there. A rep represents fewer people in most cases than selectmen in towns. Stop and think about that. So it's a unique system, and one which I think most reps subscribe to is a good system. So that's essentially the little bit of the politics involved. A couple of the bills that came up, and I'll just run through them since they were sent out to you all. 171 was relative to the civil penalty to failure to make payment of workman's compensation, was killed in the Senate. Passed the House, but the Senate killed it. What it basically did was took away the commissioner's discretion regarding the penalty, and I guess the Senate felt that the commissioner should have that discretion instead of it just being locked in. If anyone has any questions, please, I would certainly try to answer them. 241 and 127 both dealt with a state minimum wage. One bill, 241, proposed raising it to $9.25 an hour. It's presently $7.25. The other one, 127, set it at $8 an hour, but then interestingly enough, every 2 years the State Department would have to adjust it to the cost of living increase. Now, that would be subject to a vote of the legislature, but that would, I think, folks, the House killed both of those bills, felt that would be too cumbersome, and the $9.25 an hour minimum wage would be especially, I think, devastating to a number of businesses. One can argue minimum wage, what it should be, what it shouldn't be. New Hampshire's now is tied to the federal minimum wage, which I happen to agree with, and obviously, the legislature agreed with it because they passed it to do that. So that's where those stand. 379, prohibited an employer from requiring an employee or prospective employee to disclose his or her social media passwords. The House killed that bill because it was felt, I guess, by a number of people that in I don't know if in the majority of cases, but in certain cases, it was acceptable to ask for that information, especially in areas of security, law enforcement, et cetera, et cetera. So the House killed that bill. Most of these, yes.
That's their personal social media?
Yeah, yes. Interestingly enough, most of the bills that were on the list that was sent out, in fact, all but two, and I'll get to that, were all killed by the House or the Senate. 357, prohibited an employer from using credit history in employment decisions and hiring, et cetera, et cetera. This is the whole docket of this, and anyone's interested in looking at it. This bill went on and on and on through the House and the Senate. It ended up, actually, the committee of conference, I guess I could explain that process a little bit. I didn't at first, I'm sorry, but if the House and the Senate pass a bill that's been amended by one body or the other body has to agree to it in some form. Now, if they don't, then we establish what's called a committee of conference, where the House will have 4 members usually, and the Senate have 3 members, and they'll get together and discuss it, see if they can agree. Well, in this case, both the House and the Senate had passed versions of this bill as amended, but they didn't agree in the committee conference. So if they don't agree, that has to be unanimous, the bill's dead, and that's what happened, so it died in the committee conference. I suspect the biggest problem, and I don't know this, and I don't know if Ed give any insight on that one, but was the amendment dealt with the pay card, the payroll card. So there was a bill that passed the House which allowed employers to pay by a payroll card. That had some opposition, and I assume that's probably what was the death knell of the other bill in the Senate, I'm pretty sure. But it'll be back, so, right, Ed?
It will.
I think, didn't we we co-sponsored that, I think, as a matter of fact, yeah. That was a request of, actually, I think it was a request of Cranmore, the skier, yeah, Cranmore Mountain had requested that as another way, as an option to save them some money. And we could get into the pros and cons of that. I think, in my opinion, and I don't know if you want to speak on that, but in my opinion, most of the opposition, I don't think was on target with what they were saying, but unfortunately, sometimes the opposition that, I guess they were listened to, and we didn't get our case out well enough, I guess I will say it that way, but maybe the next time we will. So, do you have a comment on that, Ed, the payroll card? If you want, if that's okay.
The bills were relative to businesses being able to use payroll cards in lieu of paying with a check or paying through direct deposit, so that a business could pay all of its employees with a payroll card, which would be, in New Hampshire, it is not possible for there to be a charge to cash your check when you go to the bank for the first time. But with a payroll card, if you were to use it to withdraw part of your payroll check and then later some other part, you could get a fee charge to withdraw that money. You could also use it as a credit card, but there are also fees associated with that. And the opposition was relative to the fees that could eat up, especially low-income wage earners' payroll. So I think the challenge will be to find a way to control those costs and then maybe get
What's the
through.
advantage to the employer?
The
Can you all
employer can
speak up a little so I can hear?
I'm
it?
sorry.
No, that's,
The employer can save significant amounts of money if it is an employer who has multiple sites and has maybe one payroll place that generates the payroll. So for Cranmore, the payroll is generated in the southern part of the state. And in some places, it's been determined that generating a check can cost as much as $9 by the time you put the energy into generating it and send it up to the satellite location.
So it's an issue we will be bringing back at some point, all right, Jack?
I just have, what is the reasoning behind that? Because a direct deposit does the same thing. A direct deposit puts a lump sum of money in your checking account. Anything you do with it afterwards, you get charged for.
That was, a number of people don't have checking accounts, is that? Surprisingly enough, and maybe I shouldn't sometimes, I wonder, but there are a number of people who don't have a checking account, and we thought this was actually a benefit to them,
Well,
but,
that's what I'm saying, though. The argument that they're using
Right.
doesn't work, because if you can do it with a direct deposit and you get charged afterwards, what's the difference between getting a card and getting charged afterwards?
Because the costs associated with the payroll cards, it has been proven that they rack up to be significant costs. So I think the real challenge is to find a way to control this.
Have anybody had practical experience? Because I work
Yes.
at Cranmore with a payroll card. I don't get those charges, so I'm not sure what the problem is.
Yep.
we hope to figure that out. Next one, House Bill 360, relative to overpayments caused by arbitration awards, back pay awards, et cetera. That was killed by the House. That mostly would require, I think part of the problem was it required former employees to get involved with restitution, and that was felt that wasn't perhaps the right way to go. we do finally get one of the options available during the first year of a session is what we call retaining a bill. The committee, if it's in its process of deliberations, either finds the bill too complex, or in some cases just can't agree on what to do, or a combination of both, will vote to retain the bill. Now, that means that no action is taken on the House floor or the Senate floor this past year, and the committee will work on it this summer, mostly a little bit in the summer, and then mostly this fall, issue a report usually by November 1st or December 1st for action next year. And it gives the committee a chance to work on things. Ed's Commerce Committee, I think they retain more bills than they pass. They've got a whole plethora of them. I don't know how they're even going to get through them. But anyway, in this 249, requiring employees to verify an employee's eligibility to work in the United States, in other words, immigration type bill, that's being studied by the Labor Committee this session. There were some, I think they'll come out with something that will work on that. So that was put into study. 246, of all the bills that were listed that people might have an interest in, that's the only one that passed. And that did pass, and that was relative to falsity of reports by employees and unemployment benefits recipients. And that really did an overhaul both for employers and put the onus on them to make sure that they did their reports when it was required, or they'd be facing a civil penalty. But it also puts penalties on people who had unemployment claims and their status had changed, but they didn't report it. And so I think overall, it was a good balance between the bill taking care of employer problems and employee problems. And lo and behold, the House and Senate both agreed and passed it, and the governor signed it. So, yes.
So can you be a little more specific about what's changed for employers? What do they have to do?
It isn't so much what they have to do, it's the penalty if they don't do it. The law didn't really change on what they're required to do, but it increases and establishes penalties if they refuse to do the reports and don't do the proper reports. So there was to the best of my knowledge, there was no increase in mandates that said the employer has to do anymore.
So it's the paperwork.
Right. If you don't do it, yes. If they find that you haven't done it and there's reports that were due to the department and they weren't done, it sets penalties for that. Yep. So those are things. Now, one other bill of interest, and I'll admit right up front that to try to explain all the nuances of what it did, I am not able to do that. And if there are any attorneys here, maybe they can. But Senate Bill 41, which is a bill that really revised all the statute governing business corporations and LLCs. You've probably read about it because this started really actually it started last term. It was a bill that was killed, similar. And then the BIA, the Business Industry Association, and others really undertook a big study. Many attorneys, a number of business people all got together and said, what do we have to do? This bill was, I'm trying to think, I don't know, it must have been 40 pages long, wasn't it, I think? How many? Okay. I got through the first 40. I was a co-sponsor, and I was a co-sponsor. Someone said, "What's it do?" I said, "I can help you out on the first 40 pages," but I don't know. But anyway, but no, it's very complex, but because it had to rewrite everything. But the bottom line is, it did make significant changes, and I think it's probably one of the crowning things that this legislature did this session, I would say, to help the business community and make it easier to become a corporation in New Hampshire and to stay here. As you know, we've had a lot of people, they've gone to Delaware, they've done different things because we had rather archaic methods of, my understanding, sometimes if you had corporate meetings, you actually had to have people come here into New Hampshire to meet. This changes all that, does a lot more stuff electronically, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't know, do you have anything to add? Do you have, Susan, anything to add to that? And I have copies of it if anyone's interested and hasn't heard about it, but I do think from the business standpoint, and those of you that have corporations, LLCs, et cetera, I think this will be a great help. So
That bill did come through our committee, and the process has gone over a number of years, and so it's been worked on and revised over that period of time. In this session, really the significant changes were to make it more possible for independent stockholders to request information about all the stockholders, how to get information from them, so that if you had a challenge to something that was being proposed in an annual meeting, you could get to the stockholders and give them your perspective and your point of view. As Gene said, it allows for more electronic access to information, and it really just updates all of the pieces of the Corporation Act.
And it allows them to transmit electronically things to the Secretary of State's office, which previously they couldn't do. And I think it was pointed out, I think as I mentioned briefly, it allows participation at the meetings, at stockholder meetings, et cetera, from people out of state electronically or via however they set all this fancy stuff up anyway, but it allows for that. So it was enthusiastically supported this time around by Democrats, Republicans, everybody, the business community, attorney. Boy, when you get attorneys, the business community, all those people together, it has to be good. I think. I hope. We'll hear if it isn't, but I'm pretty sure that wide a thing. So that covers the bills that were mentioned by the group here to discuss. And now, if there's any questions on those, but now I will just open it up if anyone has any questions on the process, bills that might be coming up. The one thing I will mention, our bill filing period opens up in September, and it's a lot of times I get this, like it'll come February or April even, someone will say, well, can you put a bill in? I say, well, no, you can't. You have an opportunity sometimes to amend something perhaps, but now's the time, if any of you or know people, either whether it's your personal life, your personal business, the Valley business, or anything that you think you've seen things which you would like to see legislation establish, correct, change, or whatever, now's the time to speak to one of your representatives and see if you want to have a bill filed, and if they will file, he or she will file it, and if they decide they don't like it, talk to another one of the representatives, see if you can talk them into it. But now's the time to be doing that, and that might, I throw that out to the council. It may be something you want to discuss at a meeting and see if there is any type of legislation or anything you are interested in. Yeah, Chair.
Yeah, Gene, good point. We would like to see that benefit that Northern Coas and Northern Grafton and Northern Carroll have for business recruitment to the Valley, to the Mount Washington Valley, so that all of Carroll County is included in that tax incentive that the northern tier of the three counties have.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, and I'm surprised that we haven't been in the past, this area. When that was initially put forward, I'm not sure why it wasn't all.
Yeah, I'm not aware of that either, but
How do we get?
Bino will tell me. Yeah, Bino, I will, we can all get together with Bino and see if it needs legislation or if it's something the department can do. I'm not sure what it needs,
I
but,
think it needs, I think what I was told would be put,
yeah.
because it's a legislative boundary.
Right, yep.
Designation.
So you can help us with that, Bino?
I'd be glad
Yeah,
to.
Yeah, and, no, that sounds like, I see no reason why we wouldn't want to do that, but, unless someone points one out, but.
I think the challenge will be to define the need. In Coas County, it's pretty clear across the state what the need is for support for job creation in the North Country. And as we move that tax credit into other parts of the state, we're just going to need to really clearly define what the need is so that we can move it ahead.
Well, we're considered the North Country, that's why I'm not sure why we weren't.
I think the differentiation is pretty clear to the legislature, what the difference is between Coas and Carroll. And so what we need to do is to help to make it clear that we are part of the North Country.
What is that difference then?
Yeah.
The difference?
Yeah.
It's been clearly defined that the people in Coas have lost the lumber industry and have lost the ability to create jobs in the hospitality industry. And so, and it has been reinforced repeatedly that the unemployment figures in Coas County are greater than they are here. that Berlin has been struggling until recently. So I think that's the challenge.
Yeah, and it's nothing that can't be overcome, I don't think, but, Bino.
I would hope not, why our legislators would
Right.
fight for us.
Yeah.
Doesn't that, nobody's saying we wouldn't fight for it. I just think that we need to clarify.
Bino?
I was just gonna say that for those who might not know, what Jack was asking about is, it's called a co-op county tax credit, where if a company creates a job that pays twice the minimum wage, they have access to up to $5,000 of tax credits against their business profits or business enterprise taxes per job. You know, so it's $1,000 a year for 5 years if they get off their BPT and DT. And the representative is right that, you know, it was originally designed to help the creation of jobs in Coos County, because Coos had lost the most jobs in the state with the decimation of the paper industry in Berlin and Gorham and Groveton. Folks felt that, you know, we needed to, and there's always the thought that it's the furthest county to actually run up to for jobs. And so, you know, companies will sometimes say, I'll go, you know, up to Carroll or up to Grafton, but I'm not going all the way up to Coos, it's too far.
And didn't that expand, isn't part of Grafton in that too?
Yes.
No, it's actually, it's not.
Northern, according to what we saw on the website, it's Northern Grafton and Northern Carroll.
Well, if you're talking about the Coos County
Yeah.
tax credit with the 5,000, you know, the $1,000 a year for jobs exclusive to Coos County.
Is it? Because when you go to the website, New Hampshire Economy website, and you hit North Country,
Yeah.
it talks about that tax credit, and I'm almost honest.
Well, we'll check anyway.
Yeah, it's exclusive.
Because I was gonna say, obviously, if Upper Grafton County is eligible, there's no question Carroll County should be. I don't
Yeah,
think that-
it
But
is-
that's why
it is
I was
exclusive.
surprised when Jack mentioned it was Grafton, but yeah, okay. But we'll take a look and Bino will help us on that, so.
Be glad to.
Yeah. Any other questions? All right, yes.
What do you expect in the next session to be the most controversial bills?
Well, that's actually pretty easy. Medicaid expansion will be, if not the most controversial, certainly one of, gambling and gas tax. Those are the three that will be the major issues, actually to be refought. I mean, because they're not new, we did them this year.
Yeah.
For the well, Medicaid expansion just touched upon a little bit, we didn't get into that too deeply, but those will be the three issues. And it's interesting, Medicaid expansion, there's a party philosophical difference between the two parties, there's no question about that. Gambling and gas taxes, somewhat a little bit on the gas tax, a party philosophical difference, but there are people playing on both sides of that. Gambling, it's off the charts. There's people on from every walk of life, every party, for or against, people that you wouldn't think would be one way or the other. It's truly a guess as to how anyone stands on gambling. You know, I can sit and go around, having been there for quite a while, I can look around the room and give me a topic and I say, yeah, they'll vote yes, they'll vote no. And for the most part, be pretty close. When it comes to that gambling thing, other than now I know how some of the people voted, but before the vote this session, didn't have a clue. I mean, people, and I was surprised either way by people who either voted for or against it. So those will be the, in my opinion, certainly the three biggest issues that face the House, and they're huge issues. They're so complex. I mean, I assume there'll be some kind of resolution on them in some fashion, but it'll certainly be very late in the session before there is, and I will guarantee you that whatever it is will end up in a committee of conference, so it'll be agreed on the last week of the session, the last 2 weeks in June. But other than, I don't know, is there anything else? I don't think anything else raises to that magnitude of those three that I'm aware of, to be perfectly
And
honest.
next year is an election year, so there's an attempt to not have as many controversial bills in that year. So these three bills will be plenty of controversy.
Yeah. One of the issues on the gas tax, there will be a measure coming back in, and obviously gambling will be coming back in, and the proponents of gambling want to use the proceeds of that to help with the roads and bridges in the state of New Hampshire. And then there will be just a straight gas tax increase, I'm sure. Some of the opposition to the gas tax increase, the past one, obviously a lot of the opposition was the magnitude of it, which was pretty healthy. But the other part is the diversion of it. And those are the things that need to be sorted out somehow during the session. And I think they will be. Excuse me, Jeff, but there was one more here. Someone else had their hand up. Someone, oh, yeah,
Mine's two-part. One, what are the philosophical differences
in,
in the Medicaid expansion and the gas tax that you said, besides the philosophical
Well,
differences? I'm just curious.
I mean, obviously, when I make the statement, there are some people on, but generally speaking, the Democratic Party favors the Medicaid expansion for New Hampshire, and the Republican Party does not.
And that is why.
That's, well, the Democrats think that it's a good idea to accept the federal money, encourage more people to have insurance. The Republicans right now, I would say, before I say we're opposed to it, I will say that our position was we didn't know enough about it, in our opinion. But two things happened, that we were concerned with the federal money because they're paying 3 years of it, and we're not as confident, I guess, in the federal government coming through with all their funds after 3 years as other people are, and that's the way it is. Whether that happens or not, I don't know. The other thing is there are a number of people who would be receiving this who now have insurance, but they would then be off it and have to be paid for by the state. So I think these questions, the key thing is the committee that's working on this now, that was established in the budget, the Democrats and Republicans couldn't agree on whether to not do it or to do it. The one thing they did agree on was to set up a committee to look at it. That clearly the committee will come out 5-4 to favor it. There's no, I can give you that. They could vote now before they meet. That's how the vote will be. But the key thing is there will be, and I think the good thing is that the Democrats, the majority, will be able to clearly state why, based on what they find this summer and this fall, why they favor it. And the Republicans will be able to say, this is why we don't favor it. And then it will be clear to the people, the questions will all be answered, and the public and the legislature can make the best decision. So I think it was very important to do it this way. I think if it had passed or been defeated, I think it would have led, either way it would have happened, it would have led to a lot of questions. People wouldn't have known whether that's the right thing to do. I think this is the right way to do it. I think the committee will do a good job. There are very good people on that committee on both sides. Obviously, when you have 9 people, you're going to have a committee. It's going to have to be one way or the other, and that will come out that way. But that's okay, because there will be reports from both sides of that, and they will give good information. They're getting good information, and they're finding out a lot of. The important thing is they're finding out the answers to questions which people didn't know what the answers were. So it is a good thing. So that's.
My second question is, did you want to add to that?
I was just wondering if, in terms of Medicaid expansion, I don't know, Susan, you really supported that. Do you have thoughts about it?
I have many thoughts about that, more thoughts than we would have time for right here today. But I would like to add that the commission is getting excellent information from various experts. So far, they've heard from the Department of Health and Human Services and also the Department of Insurance. And the presentations that have been given to the commission are online. You can get them from the General Court website. They're excellent. So if you have questions, if you have concerns, and if you just want to check to see if the information you've been given is true information or misinformation, that's a great place to start. And I'd be happy to answer other questions if you want to talk with me personally or via email or whatever. And if I don't know the answers, I'll help you to find them.
Yeah. I can't repeat that enough, but I think in this case, sometimes, and I don't want to say too often, but sometimes the legislature will take action which isn't always based on all the knowledge that they should have to take a particular action. It's kind of a gut feeling, oh yeah, we'll pass this or kill this. And that happens. Whether it's good, bad, I don't know. I guess over the years it balances out. But in this case, I think this is a good thing that'll happen, and the people of the state will see, they'll see both sides, and it'll all be laid out there, and the people and the representatives can make their best decisions. So I'm saying.
And if I could just add one other thing, one of the major arguments is that the feds won't live up to their obligations. And the example that's used is special education funding. The federal law requires the feds to give the states 40% towards our cost towards special education. And I think they have never achieved that. However, relative to the federal cost for medical expenses, Medicaid, Medicare, they have never not given 100% of their commitment. And in this offer by the federal government to cover 100% of all of the Medicaid expansion for the first 3 years, down to 90% over 7.5 years, the Health and Human Services Department has projected the costs and expenses to the state and the income. And over that 7.5 years, there will be $2.3 billion of federal money that will come to New Hampshire to provide care for the expansion. That certainly will generate a surprising amount of economic engine for our state as well. But it also will save the state $58 million if, as proposed by Health and Human Services, all of the programs were supported in the way that they projected. This commission is going to look at all of the possibilities and find the New Hampshire solution, something that will benefit us best, and hopefully the feds will then support that.
And they'll find out whether some of those things are accurate or not. And I won't go into that right now, but yes, you had another
I
question.
had a second question, totally unrelated. The Chamber of Commerce has just completed their strategic plan, and one of the components of that is resources. And an idea that got thrown around the table, not mine, but it would be great. But I don't have much hope for it, but I'll throw it out and see what you think, was to have more of the rooms and meals tax that is collected by the individual communities or regions come back to that particular region for more marketing. Now, I know we have the JPP fund, which is wonderful, and through the vote, 3.5% was restored to the Office of Travel and Tourism, which increased the JPP quota by about $70,000 for each tourism organization to try and go after. But this is above and beyond that. Or the bill might take JPP away, which I'm not advocating, and say, all right, we'll just give 1% to organizations that market tourism. A lot of this is done in other states, especially with convention and visitors bureaus. There's bed taxes, or there's support by the state or the town that goes specifically into that industry. Before our committee jumps through all those hoops on something that I think would just wear us out, I'd just like your thought on that.
Thanks.
Then my question will follow that.
What? Well, I would not support that, and I can tell you why, because I think the room and meals tax is a statewide collected tax. And I think it's wrong to pit community or area against area just because one area may generate a little more than another. I think that the one big misconception, and I didn't know that question was going to come up, I would have found out where we stand now. There's always been, in my opinion, a huge misconception here in the Valley that we're one of the biggest or some big contributor to the statewide room and meals tax pot. We're not even close. I mean, the city of Manchester does more than we do. So right off the bat, we contribute a lot. But so I think we have to balance that out and take a look and see how much do we get back from other areas like Manchester, Nashua, the Seacoast, et cetera, putting money in the pot, and other communities getting more money back than we might get if you started something like this. So that's the one thing that needs to be looked at. And I should say, I guess before I wouldn't support that, I would at least want to take a look at that, because we might actually be losing money for the region.
Right.
You know, so that's something that's very important to take a look at.
Would you, Jean, would you look at that and send that information back to me? It's so hard to sometimes, an individual like myself, to filter through the Department of Revenue and get those kinds of
Sure,
numbers.
I
So
can do that, yeah.
if you could send that to
Yeah.
me, then I can give that to the people around my table so that I can convince them perhaps that it's not worth all of the trouble.
Right, now, but the other answer is you may find another rep, I'd have maybe one sponsor. Now,
understand.
I say the compromise of the comeback, if it looks like it's even doable or something it might be considered, you can always put a bill in to set up a study committee or commission to take a look at this statewide, if you can get enough buy-in from the rest of the state, so that's an option too.
Well, I
and
think
something
the
we
other
can talk
piece
about.
that maybe is more important for organizations like mine, the one that I represent, is to support the legislature putting the money into the Office of Travel and Tourism.
Well, I think to me, that's
Right.
the better way to go with it, and get, I think you find better support all around for doing something like that. Not to say that that's easy too, because obviously, there's only so much money and
Right.
everyone wants a little.
And I think
more,
it's
but-
fair for the audience and the TV audience for them to realize that not only is there the JPP funds of $187,000, but each town receives a percentage of that. And I know in the past, the town of Conway received anywhere between $400,000 and $500,000. And in the region the chamber represents, there's 28 communities. So if you added all that up,
Right.
plus what we get through JPP grants, and there's other organizations in our community that get it, it's a substantial sum, so.
I always tell people, what sounds like a good idea, and I often use an example, quite a few years ago, back when we were able to pave some roads, a little more than we are now, but there was an organization afoot, and Councilor Burton, I can say this because he was part of it, and he and a couple of other senators in the North Country are gonna form a group to focus on more roads and bridges and doing things in the North Country. And I said, this was back when I was chairman of the Public Works and Highways Committee, and I quietly went to Ray and I said, Ray, that's fine, and I understand there's political things to do this and all that, but take a ride around and you'll see that the roads in the North Country are pretty damn good compared to what they are other places. You may not want to bring attention to the fact that we're doing pretty good. And in this case, you may not want to bring attention to the fact that there is quite a bit of money from the room and meals tax going to communities right now, which is, the legislature can do anything.
Right.
What the legislature giveth, they can taketh away.
Well, they
so-
did take it
Right,
away some of
right.
that. That's
So-
why it went from 500 to 400.
Right, so it's a balancing act, Jack.
On that same note, but on a different organization with a different mission, economic development, the state,
I can't
how
hear you,
can
Jack.
the state
Speak
not
up, Jack.
be,
Or stand up. I can't hear you.
right now, the big picture for the state of New Hampshire has always been reactionary. The legislatures are always responding to shortfalls in the budget and so on and so forth. Who is looking at the big picture for where New Hampshire's gonna be in 10 years? What are our needs gonna be? We're the fastest graying state in New England. The North Country is graying faster than any other place. Economic development, I mean, Janice's organization gets JPP funding. There's no economic development funding for us to do recruitment. There's no way for us to advertise or reach out like that other organization is able to do with matching funds and corporate sponsors to reach out to people outside of the area to bring them here. Carroll County needs to start looking at its future and how it can grow, and how it can grow economically with jobs in other areas than hospitality, tourism, and attractions. That's the economic engine that will always drive this area. But we need some diversification. Who's looking at that? How can we get something happening so that New Hampshire economy, the Department of Dread, has more money in it to be able to help with recruitment, make this area more active in being able to bring jobs and businesses here. You got one county up in Coas right now that the bill is, what's the bill number? On the taxes, on the 6351 House bill, which allows that area to defer taxes or abate property taxes for 5 years for a business that wants to locate there. That's not fair. We're in the same situation. Everybody thinks that Carroll County and Mount Washington Valley is this mecca of money. There's a lot of retirees here, but if you look at the job base, and you look at the income levels, and you look at the housing costs, we are as needy as any of the other counties north of us or to the west of us. We need help. How can we get it? How can there be a commission that's going to look at the state of New Hampshire rather than being reactionary? Forget the dollars that are necessary. Just put a plan together. Who's doing that?
I can't answer that question, but how I will answer is to say this: the legislature is really, yes, we do react, I guess, for the most part, no question. But I think, and I'm not going to lay this on Vino's on DRED, but I think that type of thing between the Office of State Planning and DRED, they have to be the impetus to come to the legislature and say, this is the program we need to do for Carroll County, for New Hampshire. We either need funding or we need some authorization to do it. So I don't want to throw the ball off, but that's really how it has to work, because they're the experts. And I would suggest, that, here again, I want to put Vino and his group on the spot, that they come to a meeting and talk to you about that, not a meeting on one of these or a meeting of the council, and say, yeah, and you can talk to them about what you need, see what they have, what they're working on, what they're not working on, what the legislature can do. And once again, I would advise that to happen before September in case it needs legislative action in some fashion. Funding, the easiest way is, of course, be able to authorize them to do something without any funding, but nonetheless, if it takes funding, sometimes that can happen, and there may be ways to do it. But they get grants and things too, so. But I think that's where it has to start, and the first thing would be to find out, I guess, what they are doing. There may be something going on now that is happening along those lines. I mean, they're pretty active and they do a pretty good job. I don't want to give them, too much credit, but they do, and I think they do react well to people and coming to groups. I know Bino will go anywhere to talk to anybody at any time. I found that, so that's what I would recommend. Yep. Anyone? Well, I would try. I mean, I have to see something first here, but Bino comes in and says they need, and Commissioner Rose, I need $30 million. Probably not, but we would certainly look at. I've always, and I think all the folks up here have always supported economic development for the North Country, especially. And I consider the North Country things the real North Country starts at the top of the notches, but for a lot of us, it's obviously Carroll County, and so. Ed, do you have a question?
Could I just review briefly the Commerce Committee and the bills that we
That's up to-
did?
All right, me.
Sure. I printed out, the House Commerce Committee did 75 bills this session. And there's a list of those bills if you're curious. And two business bills that affect the Valley directly was a bill relative to B&B liquor licenses, which I think is potentially useful. B&B owners in general are usually skittish about having a liquor license. But this bill will make it easier for it to be accessible and a little less expensive, so I think that's important. One of the fascinating bills that we dealt with this session was the Auto Dealers Bill of Rights, which affects, of course, our local auto dealers and those throughout the state. The relationship between the manufacturers and the auto dealers has been something that has been legislatively impacted since the early 70s. And this was a major overhaul, and it affects costs for warranties and dealers' access to information that the manufacturers have about them. It also doesn't require anymore that they buy their marble for the renovation in Travertine marble from Italy if they can get the same thing around the corner for half the price. It doesn't require them to renovate their showroom every 2 or 3 or 5 years because that's what the manufacturer demands of them. It gives a 15-year which is the longest period in the U.S. For a auto dealer to not have to respond to a request for renovation or total rebuild, which helps in terms of the costs for our local auto dealers, and therefore hopefully will pass that down in terms of costs for cars. There were a variety of interesting bills, and please take a look at the list, and if you have questions, let us know. Some of the things that we didn't get to talk about were the increase in higher education funding, which definitely impacts businesses because the better educated our workforce and the more accessible to higher education for our citizens, the better it will be for our local businesses. There's something called Business One Stop, which is going to help us all, I think, to access information about licenses, to access information about how to grow a business or how to establish a business. And the state has been working for several years, and in the capital budget there was more money that went into it, to make it possible for us to go online and access information about licenses and regulations and codes across departments, so that we'll be able to get that rather than having to call one agency for one question and another agency for another. We'll be able to go for a one-stop business access information. They've been working on that for a few years, and there's a few more years to go. Money in the capital budget for infrastructure projects. Again, the Coos County Courthouse got $240,000 for repairs. And as Jean talked about, the Business Corporations Act, which had a lot to do with improving our business climate. The Commerce Committee is a fascinating place. I encourage you to come and listen to some of our hearings. Some of those retained bills that Jean talked about are going to be a fascinating discussion about consumer protection and how does the state deal with consumer protection, and what does the Attorney General's office have responsibility for versus other departments, and there's some infighting relative to that. One of the problems we had several years ago was a Ponzi scheme down in the Lakes region called the FRM Ponzi scheme. That's still dogging New Hampshire. We have a bill about FRM and whether or not the state will reimburse some of those people who lost millions of dollars. It's incredibly complex, but that's part of what this consumer protection piece is about too. So there are many things that are interesting, and I'd be happy to talk to you about them more if you have questions.
There is a bill, so if any of you have lost any money in any of your investments, try to get an amendment on that bill, they'll pay you back maybe.
But that's what many of the legislators believe. If you invest money and you lose, even if it's in a Ponzi scheme, you know, that's your risk. This is a surprisingly complex issue because there are clearly state regulators who didn't do their job. And because they didn't do their job, these people lost money. And it wasn't just one agency. It spread over a few agencies in terms of the responsibility that the state had to not let this go on as long as it did. And then the icing on the cake was that the Attorney General's office determined that these investments that these people made were not something that they had real property for as part of their ability to recollect part of their investment, that they were true investment vehicles, which meant that the bankruptcy lawyer could determine how to take more money from them ultimately. So it was really a sad situation, and one that may deserve, and the Senate passed it very quickly, to provide,
Yes, they did.
to provide restitution. In the House, we're taking a much longer time, and it will be much more difficult, I think, to get it through the House. But it's a fascinating issue.
Ed, on a happier note,
Yes, ma'am.
allowing companion dogs in the outdoor areas of restaurants, companion meaning my pet, not a service dog.
And that passed the House, but it did not pass the Senate, and in part because people with service dogs, people who are handicapped, and have their dogs with them going to the restaurant or going to the patio outside the restaurant, are fearful that companion dogs will distract their service dog and therefore make it more dangerous for them. And they made a very good challenge to the bill, and I think the Senate just didn't have the energy to deal with it. But it's something that we will consider. And another, interesting, although not for our region, bill was delaying the closing of bars to 2 a.m. And that came through our committee. We supported it. But one of the interesting changes between the House and the Senate was that the Senate required communities to opt into that option. So that when it came out of the House, it was opt-out. By the time it got out of the Senate, it was opt-in, which I think is a much smarter way of making it a requirement that the community decide that they want to have their bars open till 2 a.m. And some places, like Manchester, are thinking of creating a zone where that might be possible. And it's a business encouraging bill, I think. There's another bill on our committee that we retained, which would allow convenience stores to sell liquor to 1 hour later. And they're really companion bills, and it will be interesting to see how that comes out of the House and whether or not it's supported, if we do support it, or how the committee and into the House.
Aaron, can you just speak to the House Bill, 505, Economic Development Advisory Council, and the governor vetoed it?
There was a revision proposed to the Economic Development Advisory Committee, which is a group that spans lots of different industries and businesses across the state, with other experts that are supposed to work to help look at the state's needs, some of the things that Jack was talking about, and propose changes both legislatively and outside of the legislature. The proposal was to streamline the membership, to make it a little more efficient and a little more able to do its work. And it made it possible for the commissioner to get rid of people who didn't show up. But it also took people out of, it took designated members from the labor community out of the membership. And I think if the House had seen that, it would have had a little more difficulty with it. And it was a change that happened in the Senate, and the governor's office chose to veto it because she feels that labor is a critical part of that discussion.
And HB 467 relative to purchasing alliances, was this around being able to buy health insurance as in the past?
Indeed.
Is that still necessary with the Obamacare issues?
It's something that needs to be looked at in the future, but until we get on top of the implementation of Obamacare in the first couple of years, it muddies the water.
Are you still assuming that's going to happen?
We have no differences on Obamacare. It's supported entirely. I think that Obamacare is the
We're not going to have that
critical
discussion.
issue.
No, that's right.
Well, it's part of Medicaid expansion too.
Any other questions? If not, are we?
That being the case,
Okay.
would you please
Oh, sure.
pick the door prize?
Sure.
And the winner is Ed Butler. Chosen
Right,
by
right.
Gene Chandler.
For the record. Right. Right, okay, good.
And Gene,
Oh,
on behalf of the
Oh,
Economic
excellent.
Council, we
Oh,
want to
good.
thank you very
Thank
much
you.
for again
thank you.
taking the
Thank you.
time to educate us.
Yep, look forward to it anytime.
Okay, so we're in the process of planning our fall schedule for Eggs and Issues, and you'll see the notice in the next couple weeks. We had a brainstorming session yesterday, it was very productive, and now I just have to follow up with the phone calls to set up those speakers. So thank you very much for coming, and we hope to see you this fall.
We are the Carroll County Cooperative Extension, helping you make decisions that better your life. As a UNH outreach program, we provide a wealth of information and resources. With their 4-H Youth Development programs, we're helping kids develop life skills so they can grow up to have a positive impact in our community. We give you strategies to help you manage your finances so you can accomplish your goals. We're helping our communities with land stewardship, natural resource management, and even showing how to attract wildlife to your property. Our agricultural programs support local farmers, and our nutrition programs help you choose healthy foods for healthy living. With the many resources and programs available through Cooperative Extension, we're helping to improve the economy and build a better community. We are an essential resource to all Carroll County residents. and a trusted source of information.
Yeah, that's such an inspirational song, isn't it? It's just, oh, it's so beautiful. It's just so beautiful. You know, it's just, he's really special like that. Let's continue introducing our brass players. Let's do the back row for sake. The tuba, trombone that's playing the euphonium part, horn. Come on up here. That's all.
Hello, how's it going tonight? My name is Andrew Made. I play tuba. I'm a freelance musician and teacher in the New York City area. So it's good to be here. Thanks for coming out.
Good evening. My name is Andrew St. George. I'm originally from the Providence area, a trombonist, currently playing the euphonium part here. And I currently teach middle school in the Boston area.
My name is Caitlin McCready. I'm originally from Midland, Texas. And boy, am I glad to be here. I live in New York City, and I work as a freelance musician.
Very, very nice. I'm gonna do this. Great, great. So we're going to continue our program. We're going to change it up a little bit. We're going to perform American Patrol. How could we possibly do American music without doing at least one jazz tune? So we're going to do American Patrol. Just such a famous tune from the World War II. It's just, what am I going to say? It's just really fun. Makes you want to get up and dance. It's just a lot of fun to play for you, and we hope you enjoy American Patrol. Yes, that is some cool music. So we're getting to the part that's my favorite part of every program we do. We always do the armed service medley, and it's just the greatest thing. We just love doing it. But before that, I just want to, we have our conductor here, and I just want to tell you that normally I'm always the conductor, but I'm a horn player. I don't want to conduct the group. So, I talked to him about it. I said, look, just learn our songs. He did a great job. He's done a fantastic job in the front there. It's an awesome job. Anyway, here's...
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Yoon Jae Lee, and I hail from New York City, just like many of the players here. And I am a conductor, as you can see. And I'm a freelance musician, and I also teach at the City College of New York. I'm an adjunct, and I'm the founder and artistic director of a young New York-based orchestra called Ensemble 2 and 2, which consists of young professionals like the age group of those you see on stage here. Thank you.
Yes, very, very good. My name is Stephen Benke. I'm from Ridgefield, New Jersey. I attended the Manhattan School of Music, and I'm a musician in New York, and I do lots of different things. But my full-time job is doing this. We perform over 100 times a year now. We do concerts all over the country. Usually our groups consist of 6 people. You're in for a real treat here. We usually can't get this many people, but you really have a wonderful, wonderful thing going on here. And to have an organization like this that puts on concerts like this, that has the budget and the will to put on concerts with a larger scale, is really, really special. You don't see that everywhere. So to have an organization like this here, like Arts Jubilee, is, I hope you understand, this is a very, very special thing you have. Bring us all out from New York, drive up here 6 hours to come out here. But, when I talk to the people from here, they just had such passion about music and such passion about our veterans that I really want to make this happen. And we made it happen because of Arts Jubilee. It's just, they're just such wonderful, wonderful people. And also, speaking of Arts Jubilee, are we going to have a raffle? Because this is a really worthy cause, and let's hear this raffle.
Thank you. Good evening, Arts Jubilee fans. I have the raffle winners for tonight. If your name's called in here, you can pick it up at the white tent over the side where we sell the tickets. And as always, these are the businesses that support Arts Jubilee. So make sure you support them, and when you do, tell them you heard their name at Arts Jubilee. So running down the list quickly, Appalachian Mountain Club, 2 nights lodging with meals, Mike Bell. Chick Home Center gift certificate, Denise Hayes. Combing Attractions gift certificate, Angela Morin. Conway Scenic Railroad family pack excursion passes for 4, Rob Reiners. Cranmore Mountain Resort Adventure Park passes, Sharon Cruz. Eastern Mountain Sports, 1-day SUP rental, Linda Duncombe. Flatbread Company gift card, Sissy Ducey. Great Glen Trails, 1-day trail pass, summer or winter, Terry Toner. Indian Mound Golf Club, 18 holes of golf, Mike Levy. Jalisco Mexican Restaurant gift certificate, Edna Donahue. McSherry Nursery gift card, Dave Holt. Mount Washington Auto Road guided tour or vehicle pass, Donna Leahy. New England Mountain Sports gift certificate, Sasha Petowich. North Conway Country Club midweek greens fees for 2, Stephanie Stevens. Pearl Isam Factory Outlet gift certificate, Jen Papalo. Pirates Cove Adventure Pass family package for 4, Bobby Bromamere. Purity Springs pair of ski tickets for Pat Mason. Storyland day passes for 2, Ben Colbath. The Bike Shop gift certificate, Terry Tenney. Rugged Mountain $20 gift card, Ann Bento. Valley Originals Horse Feathers gift certificate, Claude Pigeon. Wentworth Golf Club midweek green fees for 2, Paul Samelchek. White Mountain Family Golf mini golf for 2, Tinkham. And Zeb's General Store gift basket, Kerry George. Thank you all. Enjoy the concert. Thank you.
As you can see, it takes a lot of people to put this great concert on, and a lot of fantastic people, and we're so happy to hear for you. So now, it's like I said, our favorite part of the program, the Armed Service Medley, our salute to the Armed Forces. These are all 5 tunes. We have the Army, we have the Marine Corps, we have the Navy, we have the Air Force, and the Coast Guard. They all work together, and they're all the best at what they do, and that's what makes our military so special. They are all the best because they have the best people. They have the best quality people because we have a volunteer military that volunteers to serve our country. We're not like other countries where we have to draft everyone in. We have incredible volunteers here who make it possible to have an all-volunteer military, and we are so, so thankful for everyone's service. So when you hear this music, please stand when you hear your song. Even if you're a family member, please stand because you serve too. You're home. You had to take care of the families. It's very, very difficult. It affects everybody when someone's overseas. It's very, very difficult. So when you hear your song, please stand proud. Make yourself be known. Make a ruckus. You should be so proud of your service, and we're so proud of you. Our Armed Service Medley, and salute to you. I'd like to have everyone just stand again. Let's give them a round of applause. Everyone just stood up. Let's give you another round of applause. We just thank you so much for your service. Thank you so much. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Our final selection is no more fitting piece for our final selection than to play the Stars and Stripes Forever. This is our national march, Act of Congress. This is our national march, and this really is the real deal. And it is so much about what it is to be American. This is actually, I don't know if you know this, but Stars and Stripes Forever is one of Sousa's earlier marches. It's not, it really defined his style, and it always stayed with him, and it's just, it's a great march. We'll always remember it. We all love it. So clap your hands, have a great time, and we're so happy to be here. You're a fantastic audience, and we're so happy to be here with our veterans. We're just, in the 10th Mountain Division, we're just so happy to be here with everybody here. Thank you so much. You're all just fantastic. Thank you so much. Here is the Stars and Stripes Forever. Great job, guys. Awesome job, guys. Thank you so, so much. Have a great night and have a safe trip home.
very much for being here this evening. We're so happy to be back again. It's my third year with the group, so I know that we've been playing here for a long time. The last 3 years has been a tremendous pleasure, and I know that tonight is equally or better. So the first piece we played for you, I thought it was an appropriate title, The Music Makers. That's what we do. We have fun doing it. We are a volunteer organization, so everyone in here does this just for the fun of it. There's no pay involved. And it's written by Alfred Reed. Alfred Reed is really known for so many things. He wrote original compositions for band. He does a lot of Bach transcriptions for band. He just really wrote so much stuff. And so it's a great way to open up our concert. The next piece we're going to do, since this is Memorial Day weekend, but also sort of the Americana feeling, the next piece is written by Charles Ives, great New England composer from here in New England and is associated with here. A lot of pieces, I'm just curious, raise your hand if you've heard pieces by Charles Ives before. Oh, great, wonderful. Well, if you've heard Charles Ives, he kind of gets he's like hot and sour soup. You either love it or hate it. You know, some people are like, all right, but some people are like, oh no. This piece is a lot of Charles Ives stuff like Country Band March, where it literally is supposed to sound like two different groups playing at two different speeds at the same time. This piece doesn't go down that road. This is much different. So the last movement will give you that taste, which is why I want to explain this piece for just a moment. It is divided into 5 movements, which is not listed in your program. The first movement is a nice little waltz, and every one of them has a different sort of background to it. And the second movement is the opera house, and you can just imagine sort of opening the curtain halfway through the piece for the beginning of an overture. And the third movement is titled The Collection, which is actually referring to the time in the Mass service where there's a collection plate going on. So you hear the ensemble sort of imitating the sound of an organ, since all these instruments here, the wind instruments, brass and woodwinds, are simply air going through a tube. We can actually achieve that goal. So it's sort of